Please note that this content is for adults only. Viewer discretion advised. If you haven't yet, hit the subscribe, like, and share. And we have John Kelly, criminal profiler, back on the show. Welcome.
Welcome, Gisela. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on the Long Island serial killer, the suspect that's been arrested, the Eastbound Strangler, and, some people thinking it could be the same person. Or from what I've seen from you, you think it could be different people. So I can't wait to hear your thoughts about this.
Listen, I got to say hello to all the Grizzlies. I mean, you got the greatest sleuth of Grizzlies in the world, and you deserve it for how hard you work for them. I mean, but I mean, they're just great. They're always popping up here and there. John, hello. I'm a friend of Gilgo. I'm in the Grizzlies. I mean, it's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I love being on and talking to you in the Grizzlies. Yeah.
Yes, and we love having you on. I hope many have bought your book. If for those who don't know, can you show us maybe your book that you wrote?
Yeah. Many of the Grizzlies have bought the book. I truly appreciate it. I truly appreciate their positive feedback. Discovering Lazarus is the name of the book. And as you know, it's the good, the bad, the ugly of John Kelly, criminal profile. Kicking drugs, kicking a severe cocaine habit, moving on to become an addiction counselor, moving on to become do clinical work and social work, and then moving on to becoming an addiction specialist and a profiler. And here I am today. And thank you all for all your purchases. I really can't thank you enough and all your great comments. It's just wonderful. I feel at home when I'm with the Grizzlies and with you. I mean, you really,
yes, you are
really, really easy to talk to, very comfortable person, very knowledgeable.
Thank you. And the Grizzlies always ask, especially now with this case, where's John Kelly? Have you spoken to John Kelly? Yes. And we've looked at your profile as well on your website, but I'd love for you to share your thoughts on the man that was arrested, that is suspected of being the Gilgo Beach killer, aka the Long Island serial killer. Is that the same person for you? Like when they say Gilgo Beach murders and Long Island serial killer, would that in your mind be the suspect they've arrested?
Rex Heuermann. I'm an architect. I'm an architectural consultant. I'm a troubleshooter. Born and raised on Long Island. Okay. Been working in Manhattan since 1987. And it's actually a cabinet maker's hammer.
The work is not done here, but this is a major step forward.
My reaction is, this is nuts. It's really, really crazy. You never know, you never know who your neighbors are, right?
Even though he's innocent until proven guilty.
Well, I really believe there are two now. Now, after he was arrested, I believe there are two Long Island serial killers. Now, let me take you back. A decade or so. And, the Gilgo 4 were found and everything. Well, there's a difference in serial killers. There's serial killers that like to do different things to their victims as far as bondage goes. And this fellow here, Rex, is definitely, as far as I'm concerned, into bondage, probably into strangulation. Definitely, I think he's into torture. But the one thing we never knew all these years until recently were the victims, the Gilgo 4, cut up and put in those burlap bags. Okay. Because a butcher, a serial killer that's a cutter and a butcher, is much different than a serial killer that's into bondage and into strangulation. Okay. So now if you look at the whole Gilgo situation, you're going to see some of those victims were cut up. They were butchered. You'll see parts of them over on the beach. You'll see parts of them being found in Manorville, New York, and elsewhere. Okay. I mean, this to me is not Rex. Okay. Now, I do believe Rex has more bodies out there, and I can be wrong, but the cutting and the butchering is its own kind of high, its own kind of thrill for that particular person, that particular serial killer. And since we're hearing that the girls were bound, okay, that were found in the burlap bags, I mean, and not cut up, that leads me now to believe there are two. I believe there was one because we did not have the information. And I kept saying, look, we got to see what it's like with their bodies in the bags, because there is a major difference in the subtype of serial killer that is a cutter and does butchering versus one that's, into strangling and bondage and hiding the victim. Don't forget this other serial killer, and I believe there is another one. I don't think did the greatest job of hiding the bodies. I mean, I guess he did a well enough job, but I'd have to look more into it, know more about it. But don't forget, you also have a convicted serial killer from Manorville where some of the body parts are found. They call him Crazy Johnny. And he's convicted. He's in prison for 2 murders going back to 1996. I don't see Rexy as a cutter. I can be wrong, but I don't see Rexy as a cutter. I know for a fact that John Bitrolff was a major hunter. I know he loved to hunt deer. He loved to kill deer. He loved to skin deer. He has a reputation for pulling a one of the and I might add that he's a person. He's an interesting person here, but I'm not saying he's responsible for any of these murders. I mean, he's innocent until proven guilty, but he was convicted of 2 other prostitute murders on Long Island. And getting back to the deer hunting, he cut the deer up, pulled the deer's heart out, and ate it. That's supposedly part of his legend. And also, we have a situation where he had a pet pig and supposedly had a party and carved that pig up. Now, again, supposedly, allegedly, it's been written a couple different places. So, I mean, I can see a cutting. I can see a cutter in John Bitrolff of animals. I don't know and can't say definitely that he's cut up any human beings, but I will say that for sure, some of those victims were cut up, okay, had parts dismembered, okay, that were on the beach. So I just don't think that's a Rex situation. Now, what's really fascinating here is that you really can't find two serial killers that use the same pretty much dump site. Okay,
right. That's what I was going to ask you. Like, would they be aware of each other, or what is that all about?
Exactly. And that's something else that's always been in the back of my mind, right? Which made sense. There was only one until we discover that these bodies were bound but not cut up, right? So in looking at this, I say to myself, how big were these dumping grounds? Well, 2 miles to 3 miles in a perfect dumping area like that, dark at night, no lights. I mean, that is a serial killer's dumping paradise. Okay.
Okay, let's just zoom in here from where the bodies were found. Let's just say from there to there is about 2 miles. Yeah.
Okay, about 2 months. So, and some of these earlier victims looked to me like they were grabbed in New York City, outside of New York, the earlier victims. Okay. But even somebody driving from New York that lived on the other side of Long Island could come down that Ocean Parkway. The point I'm trying to make is you've got a stretch of road that is perfect at night because you can, if you're thinking about dumping a body, you can actually see if there's a car coming either way. I mean, that is beautiful. There's no lights. Nobody can see you. You got your lights off. You're looking for another car. In the meantime, you're taking the body out. You're dumping the body. Nobody's seen you. There's no cameras. There's no lights. Okay. It's completely dark. All right. And, off you can go. But that is like a perfect spot. The question is, do we have two serial killers that have used this similar dump spot? Now, we're not saying, like you measured it a couple miles, we're not saying this is 300 yards long and two people used it to dump bodies. We're talking a couple of miles
Right.
of perfect, secluded dumping area, correct?
Yes. So about 3, if I measure from where Amber Costello was found and all the way to the map that they show, it's 2.7 miles. If I
that's the let me see. Yeah. That's not like in the that they were dumping in their own backyard. I mean, we've got some miles in a very secluded, dark and perfect dumping area. So that's why I'm hanging with the two that there was two serial killers on Long Island using this particular area at various times. Again, somebody that's butchering people is much different than somebody that's strangling and pretty much into bondage and probably torture, of some sort. I mean, he is a sadist. I mean, you could tell by him calling up on the phone, calling
Amanda, her sister, Melissa Barthelomew's sister, yes.
Yeah,
several times.
Terrible. Yeah, so he's very sadistic. Both of these guys are sadistic. There's no question about it. Okay. Now the other two that Johnny B, Bitrolff got arrested for, they were posed as well. They were posed out in the open back in 1996. They were not really hidden. They were posed out there. And this takes a very sick mind. Anybody, and again, I'm not saying, even though he's been convicted, I can't definitely say from my point of view, I have to go with the cops. The jury's convicted him, so he's responsible for those two murders. But I can't say he's responsible for any of these. But a poser is somebody quite different too. That can go along with the cutting. That is quite different too than from somebody that really tries to hide and conceal the bodies and use camouflage burlap and it's into bondage. You're dealing with like two different personalities, and Bitrolff posed these women. Now, I want the Grizzlies and the whole audience, even those that might be lurkers and not Grizzlies yet, that should become Grizzlies, they should subscribe to best deal around on YouTube. They pose, it's like this antisocial personality disorder because the posing isn't just what they want. They want it, but it's not just their art, their horrific art, if you will. What it also is like a big FU to society, because at some point somebody's going to come across those bodies. And when they see those bodies, they are going to be in shock, okay, at the way they're posed. Okay. So what they're going to do, then they're going to call first responders. First responders are going to show up. And the shock value is an added feature that the posing serial killer usually likes to entertain after they've left their horrific art for others to see. And unfortunately, it's a pretty depraved human being, a very, very sadistic kind of human being. So both of them, I believe, are sadists, but I think we have two. I don't believe one person is responsible for all of this.
And then when it comes to the Manorville dumping grounds and what is known as, the Eastbound Strangler, is that a different one? Do you think that's a third one, or do you think it's either one of these two?
Well, I will tell you that I do not believe that the Eastbound Strangler, I will tell you, I definitely don't believe it's Rex. I don't believe it's Rex, because again, I mean, I was there right after the murders. We deep dived it on Dark Minds, on Investigation Discovery. We deep dived it on Dark Minds for Long Island. We did both of them on Dark Minds. These girls in Atlantic City were posed with their arms straight out on a drainage ditch, and their faces and their arms in the drainage ditch, and their bodies were facing east.
Yes.
Now, somebody came up with the word. A lot of people don't know where Eastbound Strangler came from, right? So somebody came up with that term, okay? And it's not me.
Oh, I'm looking. I was like, am I looking at this? Okay.
Frank.
Oh, okay.
I said, Frank, what are we going to call this guy? We got to do a profile. I said, they're lying here in the water, and they're posed out, and the face is pointing east. He said, how about the Eastbound Strangler? Rex wasn't into posing. He was into hiding his bodies. This guy here didn't care if the bodies were found, obviously. He knew they were going to be found because there were transformers underneath. There was wiring underneath going over this ditch. Anybody with, a brain would know that sooner or later people are going to come out of the hotel. People are doing maintenance all the time, walking back and forth. Somebody at some point was going to recognize, was going to find these bodies, right? The one thing I find interesting too is this connection between BTK and Rex, because we know BTK had an extensive cooling off period. So we can say to ourselves, did Rex have an extensive cooling off period? If he did, how was he dealing with his urges? How is he controlling them? How is he, like we say, talking among the guys, how's he getting his juice? How's he getting his juice? We know that he's got quite a history here on looking at sadistic porno. Okay. And could that be enough to pacify him? We know that he's been regularly looking and searching John Bitrolff. Was he hoping and praying John Bitrolff would somehow get arrested for these murders?
With that theory, it's interesting then that, let's say, if he had killed before and speculate that he put bodies in the water, maybe he put those 4 on the beach thinking it will be connected to John Bitrolff, for example.
That's as good a point as anybody, right? I mean,
Right.
you know, but what he did too, he did try to hide them, and you know, but on the beach, and some of the other bodies were obviously, some of them were hit too, and then even body parts that were dismembered. I'm not sure how they were packaged, or if they were packaged. I assume they were in a plastic bag or something. But that is an excellent point. It's very possible. It's very possible. Now, the other part of it is, though, where has he been? Okay, where has he been? Could he just kill 4 people this short period of time and cool off just like that? See, that's very hard for me to accept and to swallow. I believe he has more bodies out there. They've got to put a full court press on. Law enforcement has to put a full court press on. They got to go to all these different sex workers that even knew him or came near him and interview them. They've got to look at where he's been. They've got hopefully they've got a lot of evidence out of the house that can point them in the right direction. I will not be surprised at all on how many trophies they come up with, because he's definitely a trophy taker in my book. There's no question about it. But getting back to BTK, a major cooling off period with BTK. He stopped for...
And Dennis Rader took a cooler period of 13 years. 13-year
Okay,
hiatus.
13, thank you. He compares himself to Rex. Now, very hard for me to believe anybody could have that type of cooling off period when they get these urges. However, what I've also learned, and what your audience is going to learn now, is that there are 2 types of serial killers. The types that abuse substance and the types that don't abuse substance. Okay? The serial killers that abuse substance are really not able to maintain any long cooling off period. They have a hard time with maintaining a long cooling off period. It's very hard for them to maintain. I'm sorry. So when you understand this, it's because of the substance. You know, they're on substance. They start to get the urge. They have poor impulse control because they're on substance. They have the big uninhibitor in them. So it's very hard for them to have a sustained cooling off period. But somebody that doesn't use substance doesn't have that big uninhibitor in them, and can sometimes have a much longer and sustained cooling off period. And really, because they're not on substance, it helps them have more control over the urges when they're afraid of getting caught. The substance abusing serial killers, like Bundy, as you know, Gacy, as you know, you wrote books on both of them, both did substance. I mean, they're gone. I mean, the one guy's running in the sorority house, killing everybody, and he's on the lam. He's at that point in time, he's supposed to be on the down low, hiding.
Yes.
But he's drunk. He's drunk, and he's in a sorority house, right? John Wayne Gacy is doing drugs every day, at the very least marijuana, I know of, right?
He had a whole bunch of pills and
And a whole bunch of pills,
Yeah.
right? Well, he's got bodies down in his basement. We know that after a while, bodies start to decay and they give off a terrible smell. And he's not even hip to that. I mean, he's not even, truly understanding that's how dumb he is and stupid in a certain way. And but again, how much did substance have a role in that kind of thinking?
yeah.
Irrational thinking and impulse control, because Bundy couldn't control his impulses, and neither could Gacy. They were both on substance. The bottom line is, substance abusing serial killers have poor impulse control, and usually don't have very long cooling off periods, and usually act on urges, whereas serial killers that do not abuse substance, and who I will say are teetotalers, we call them, they can have an extensive cooling off period. Even Unabomber, I think he had a 7-year cooling off period. I mean, it's very interesting. And you got to take this all into consideration when you're hunting these people. So I think we're going to hear more from Rex.
Yes.
I mean, definitely going to hear more from him. I look at him as a really good picture. If you really want to look at a good picture of an evil chameleon, okay, I call him the evil chameleon because here he is, front and center, Manhattan, president of the company, all dressed up in the suit, looking good, just wanting to get himself out there, do a little YouTube commercial and get a little advertising out there to plug the business, quite the Manhattan businessman, but yet this is the same guy that will go out and abduct, bind, because he's got a bondage fetish, and torture and eventually kill victims. I mean, so, it's going to be very interesting legally to see in which direction law enforcement goes. And psychologically, it's going to be very interesting to see, how the making of the monster took place, if you will.
Exactly.
This is going to be very, very, very interesting.
Definitely. I mean, his father dying when he was 11. And then I feel like that divorce between 94 and 96 is quite interesting as well.
Yeah, and they were by me, they were New Brunswick, New Jersey. That's when I got married.
Oh, yes, true. Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be really, really interesting to see where that ends up. But the one wild card that nobody's talking a little bit about, but not talking a lot about, and I think you're going to see him come into the mix. Pretty soon is his brother, down there in South Carolina. I think that's right. Yeah, because they both grew up in the same family with the same father and mother, right? And if you get into family dynamics, I'm just wondering what's going to pop up.
Yeah, it could be very interesting.
Oh, I definitely. I mean, hold your seat. Stay tuned. Grizzly.com.
Yeah, everybody buckle up.
Buckle up.
What's also interesting is the fourth victim that went missing, Amber Costello. Apparently her roommate had a altercation with Rex and saw the car, because that's a tip that he gave in. So I wonder if that would have almost forced Rex into like a cool-off period, because now someone's interacted with him, seen his car. That's also interesting. If so, and if it was a 13-year cool-off period, because that's from 2010 to 2023, there's also the pandemic that happened, which would perhaps force a bit of a cool-off period in any case.
The vast majority of serial killers have a visual primary intake sense. Some are auditory, but they're a lot less than the visual. Most are visual. Okay. So it would really strike them right dead in the heart if somebody got a good look at them and saw them. Okay. So that's one piece of it when you talk about seeing a victim or a victim seeing the suspect. Well, I truly believe that could have happened with Rex. He knew this guy saw him. He knew that. And he knew that, this guy was living with, if I'm correct, or very close to Amber Costello, right?
Yes, I think roommate. Yes.
So he's been seen. And you'll never, once you see him, you'll never forget him. Okay. And they would have got him a lot sooner if they didn't have the turmoil going on over at the with law enforcement over there. You know, no matter how you're feeling, or how angry you are, or upset over the situation, you can't let feelings interfere with facts. You know, you have to have facts. You have to have facts. I mean, you can have theories and look at certain pieces of the puzzle, but for all these years, we did not know, maybe we just missed it, that these girls were bound inside of that burlap and everything, because if they were cut up, that would lead me to believe that, yeah, maybe one person did do all this, you know, but I believe there's at least two.
Okay, and then with Rex's Google searches, you know, do you think he was very paranoid that he would be caught, or do you think he wanted to be caught?
They don't want to get caught, most of them. That's a myth, okay? His Google searches are, you hit the nail on the head, paranoia. These guys are all paranoid, all of them, okay? And they have, most of them, let me say 99% of them. You have some psychopaths that don't feel fear at all, okay, and aren't paranoid. But they're all paranoid because they don't want to get arrested, because if they get arrested, they lose complete control, okay? They're put into prison, okay? But, and that's what we try to do in a lot of cases, which we've been successful at, is try to tap into that paranoia with a hit or two. We put a profile out there, get the guy woke up, get him on his feet, get him running, and have him wondering how close law enforcement is to catching him. And hopefully that'll be enough of a detriment to keep him from, moving on his next victim. That'll derail him in a way, get him off stride, keep him moving, keep him low and keep him running. You know, that's what we want to do. Because some of these guys that are on fire, like, AC 1 a week, where's that end up at? 52 weeks in here. I mean, approximately killing 1 a week. What's a Gary Ridgway time? I mean, 49 bodies later that we know of, and you never get them all. They always hold some back. Rex, if he is in fact, convicted of these murders, I mean, he'll still hold some back. I sincerely doubt if he'll give them all up, because there's no death penalty in New York. So he's going to get life regardless of what, the one thing they definitely have to do is, keep him on suicide watch. That's very important. And what they also have to watch out for, because this guy is no dummy. Okay, he's no dummy. Suicide by cop. Suicide by cop. Because he's so big and he knows it. He's intimidating. And maybe he'd have it in his mind, look, they're watching me. I can't kill myself in this prison cell. But maybe when I get out of this prison cell, I can create some kind of disturbance or something, and I don't know for sure, but I try to dot every I and cross every T. I mean, if he lunged at a police officer, whatever, I could see a police officer defending themselves against a big guy like that and shooting him, I mean, so anything's up for grabs with him, because don't forget, if he doesn't get his day in court, you cannot say he is guilty. He has to be found guilty in a court of law. If he dies before he gets to that court of law, somehow, suicide or whatever, you're innocent to proven guilty. It's, everything will just stop. The investigation, they may use stuff from the investigation that they got from him and everything, but the prosecution of him will just stop, is what I'm saying. The prosecution will stop because he's dead. So, and I think he might be smart enough to know that. Something else that I think is interesting is the way the house stood out. I mean, this guy's got all his money tied up in guns. He's got this land he's purchased in Vegas, or this condo. He's got this land he's purchased in South Carolina, But the house itself, I mean, that has many tales to tell. And, it's like no scorn or no shame. You're a big time businessman, deep in Manhattan business district, and you're so successful and you're spending money all over the place. And you live in this beautiful, nice neighborhood with a lot of affluence around you and expensive homes. And, you've just let the house go. So I think there's something about that too. Hopefully that'll be unraveled at some point. I mean, he also is very, very, yeah.
There's the house, and apparently this is his dad's. I'm not sure, like a really old car that he kept. So that's interesting. Someone was saying maybe, I think it was actually Dr. Gary Brucato said that maybe he wants to keep this like a shrine to his dad in a way as well. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. I got to learn more about the father.
Yes.
The other thing that intrigues me is this man was definitely interested in blondes. I mean, he liked blondes. I think that was his hair color of choice when he was looking at a woman, picking up a woman. I think his mother was a blonde. I think that doll they were hauling out of the house or whatever was a blonde. That's interesting to me.
He was also Googling redheads. That's an interesting one too. And some of the victims had like strawberry blonde hair or more towards reddish brown. Yeah, so that could also be.
Yeah, like a reddish brown. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What had us too in the beginning was the Megan Waterman and Amber Costello, if I have it right. I think I do. They didn't have their cell phones. And that's a no-no. That's a no-no. Yes. For a girl that's in the sex trade, working the street or working dates, going on dates, your cell phone's your lifeline. If you got a bad date, you got a bad John, a rough John, and you got to get away from them. You got to make a phone call to the cops or get help for yourself. So that was something that always bothered us too. I don't know what that's all about, but we felt somehow maybe he was trying to talk them out of bringing their cell phones.
Probably. Yesterday, I don't know if you saw any of that speculation I was doing there with out of the Gilgo 4, the first 2 that went missing were the ones who had their cell phones on them and he taunted the families. So maybe after that, he realized he can't control himself. So he needed, because he'll get caught like that. So he needed to tell them, don't bring your phone along. It could be something like that because the other 2 didn't bring their phones along.
It could absolutely be something like that. Or it could be, I told you not to bring that phone along. And here you are dead now. And here you have a phone. So guess what I'm going to do now, bad girl? I'm going to turn around and taunt your family with your phone.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that could be.
We don't know. We don't, right? But I mean, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, we don't know. He only knows. He only knows. He's just and then once you've seen it all, once you think you've seen it all, then you have a new nut butt pop up.
A new nut butt.
You want to talk about nut butts? We got them all coming here. I'll tell you what. But they're showing up all over the place here.
And do you think, because yesterday they had the press conference outside the house, they said they're done with the searches, but they couldn't really answer any questions. Of course, now they're going to have to test everything. But do you think there's a strong possibility that in Rex Heuermann's home, there would be trophies, possible trace evidence, maybe even human remains, things like that? And what do you think about this vault, this basement, the secret basement with the guns in?
Well, I think that he may have used it specifically for the storing of the guns, but I would not put it past him to bring a girl home when he could and bring her into that vault and do whatever he wanted to her, because she could scream all she wanted. I mean, and nobody would hear her screams. Nobody would hear her screams. And, so, I mean, even though you got the gun stored in there, you could certainly still have enough room to kill somebody in there, right? So, or do whatever else maybe you had in mind. I think there's probably more trace evidence there. I wouldn't be surprised. All the above, everything you mentioned, if they find it, the trophies in there, like we said on this guy too, a place for everything and everything in its place. I mean, he was a hoarder, so I guess he did keep everything up.
Organized chaos. Maybe there is a place for everything. It's just looking very chaotic, right?
I mean, chaotic and everything, but yet when you look at that type of job, if you're not structured or you don't have good structured people working for you, how in the name of God do you do architecture and deal with all the licensing and all the hoops you have to jump over in order to get some work done or something built in New York City?
Yeah.
So he's definitely a two-minded person. I mean, he has a mind for a certain way to manipulate business, but he also has a very devious, depraved criminal mind.
With the home life, do you think, because of course a lot of people, we see it in every case, I've asked you this in other cases before, if they say, how could the wife not have known, or did the family not know, what would you say to that?
Yeah, the family is usually the last to know, and all the shame and embarrassment and the anger and rage that it's going to be directed at us through school and through the neighborhood, and all the legal costs, and he's going away, I'll never see him again. It's sometimes, in most cases, even I'll say, it's too much for the spouse to accept. This woman here, his wife, I think it just had it was with his acting out. Maybe she knew about all his porno. Maybe she knew about some infidelity. Maybe she probably didn't know about the murders. And she just felt enough is enough. And let me go for a divorce now, so I have some chance at recouping some kind of financial benefit from our estate as well, because they're coming. I mean, all these victims' families and whoever's going to be coming, and this guy is going to be sued, and for every single dime they have, and if she went and sought any kind of counseling from an attorney, I'm sure he would have told her that you might try to get in line here and get first in line, because this wasn't you didn't have anything to do with it, so why should you lose your portion of the estate? That would be my suggestion.
Right. And that's what happened. She filed for divorce, and she did say very embarrassed. Like they shocked, disgusted, and embarrassed, and it's like divorce. That's it, which I would imagine for someone like Rex, do you think that causes some sort of abandonment issues? Because when the family went on holiday, that's generally when he killed. Do you think there's any underlying abandonment issue, or is it like, yeah, you go along because he needs to satisfy that urge?
I believe it's not the abandonment issue. He could have an abandonment issue. I believe it would be more with his father, and we could deal with that. We could look into that. As we get more information, I'm going to find out about the father, what happened to him. But I don't believe that the abandonment issue in general was with the wife. I think it was he was very happy to see her planning a vacation and getting ready to go out of town with the kid. How many children?
One daughter they had together, and then he's got a stepson. So I'm assuming that could be from a previous relationship she was in, or a previous marriage or something. Special needs stepson, which is also interesting because I think the special needs stepson takes a lot of her attention, so that helps him as well.
A lot. So for him knowing that, because that addiction is, that urge is just that anticipation. Oh, it's only 2 more weeks and she'll be gone. Oh, it's only 1 more week and she'll be gone. That anticipation is building. like a cocaine addict getting ready to, boy, it's almost Tuesday and I can go pick up and get high tonight, I think it was more about his addiction, that he wanted the house to himself. He had it all planned. He was going to slip those girls in there or slip somebody in there and do his thing, whatever his thing was. And, he wasn't going to have to worry about being surprised or anybody seeing anything. I just think that that didn't have anything to do with it.
Thank you so much for sharing some of your profile with us. I mean, it's an extensive profile that I'd love to go over it sometime with all the Grizzlies. And then if your stalk team ever wants to come and break down this case as we learn more information as well, or just to share the profile, of course, you're always invited as well.
And we will take you up on that invite. It's very gracious of you. We appreciate your hospitality as always. Again, you guys are great. And I can't thank you and the Grizzlies enough. Thank you so much.